A country girl was humiliated because of her cheap clothes, but it turns out she's the new CEO. What if the new employee, mocked from day one, turns out to be more than she seems? What if the quiet, inconspicuous girl in the worn jacket isn't an intern, but the CEO, determined to test her company's culture from the inside? Before we begin, let us know in the comments what part of the world you're watching from today. It's early morning. The chilly air is permeated with the smell of coffee and glossy magazines. People in formal suits, carrying identical briefcases and facial expressions, line up near a glass skyscraper. I know where I'm going. Only one figure stands out from this harmony. A girl in a dark green, worn jacket and a well-worn fabric shoulder bag. At the entrance, the security guard glances at her. He doesn't ask for documents. He asks, "Delivery?" "No," she answers calmly. "I'm going to HR." He purses his lips, stays silent, and yet lets her through. The elevator goes up to the 32nd floor. Each stop is like a culling. The higher you go, the more expensive the shoes. She looks at the screens, at the front panels, by the doors, at the people's behavior. She memorizes. Silently. In the office hallway, she is met by Richard, the head of HR, tall, confident, with a smile that holds more disdain than greeting. "You, Emma," he says, as if he's unsure whether he's understood correctly. "Yes, Emma Parker, today is my first day." He pauses, then looks her over from head to toe, slowly, casually, like he's looking at a dent in someone else's car, and loudly, so that others can hear. Says, "Well, we love unconventional people. I hope you can adapt." Although in this office, not everything is forgiven. A few people behind her quietly chuckle. Emma nods. Not a single muscle on her face moves. She is led through open space, a long hall with endless rows of desks. People turn around. Some whisper, "The farm girl is an intern. Why is she not wearing a suit?" She is seated in the farthest corner next to the printer. On the desk is a stack of papers. "Start with this," Richard says. "Assign them to departments, then come for coffee for the meeting, and try not to get lost." He leaves, leaving a thin trail of perfume and condescension. The first few days are like being scrutinized. Does she even know how to open a CRM system? Or did she even study? Who even hired her here? The tasks are pointless. Either print out 30 identical contracts, or deliver a report that no one reads. In the conference room, she stands with a tray of coffee while they discuss multi-million-dollar budgets. They don't notice her, but she hears. Emma endures, doesn't respond. Every evening, she's the last to leave. Not because they force her, but because she stays at the computer. There's a lot in the public access. She's not checked. No one monitors. Everyone thinks she won't understand anything. But she understands. She reads reports. She reconciles budgets. She notices that the marketing department is ineffective. The product strategy is outdated. New ideas in the IT department are suppressed. People are afraid to speak up. She writes it all down in a fact sheet. A week later, Helena, a junior analyst, approaches her. "Listen, are you really from the village?" She asks good-naturedly, but with interest. "Yes," Emma replies. "I grew up there, but I studied in the capital." "And how did you get here?" She applied, passed the selection, like everyone else. Helena nods, but she's unsure. She still doesn't understand why someone like that ended up here. At one of the meetings, Richard makes another attack. "Emma, you'll have a chance to tell us who you are. Maybe tomorrow." He laughs, expecting her to refuse, but she answers simply fine. He freezes for a split second, and then smiles. Broader. "Great, then get ready. Tomorrow morning, everyone will be there." That night, the lights are on in the office again until late in the evening. Emma is left alone. In front of her is a screen with slides, tables, graphs, logic, and indeed. She's ready, but no one is ready for what tomorrow will bring. The next morning began as usual. The corridors filled with the hum of footsteps, coffee machines, and hushed conversations. The elevator lifted up the same smoothly shaven faces, the same mirror-shined shoes. Only today, their faces were expectant. Emma would say something. No one knew what exactly, but everyone was already anticipating awkwardness. Do you think she even knows how to speak in public? Whispered one of the marketing managers. I think she was panicking and rehearsing in front of the mirror yesterday, chuckled another. When Emma entered the conference room, there was neither panic nor pathos. A simple gray shirt, black trousers, her hair pulled back, her old bag next to her. Hey, screen was already on the wall. Helena, the same junior the analyst helped her connect, not out of pity, but because she sensed something in her, a hunch. The room was almost full, almost the entire administrative staff. Richard stood in the corner, his arms confidently crossed. He was sure it would be funny. Humiliation always attracts viewers. Good morning, Emma said calmly. I'm Emma Parker, and as requested, I'd like to tell you a little about myself. A pause on the screen, a white background, the usual title. Culture and Growth, an inside look. Someone chuckled. Instead of talking about myself, she continued, I decided to share what I saw in the first week. Honestly, without embellishment and with suggestions. Richard narrowed his eyes. He felt his control begin to slip. First, marketing. On the screen, a table with duplicate expenses and old promotion channels highlighted in red. Over the past 6 months, the company's ROI has dropped by 30%. This isn't the fault of the performers, it's the lack of strategy. Instead of segmented work, we're hitting the void. Whispers in the room. Second, product. A slide comparing the features of our platform and those of our competitors. Our functionality is outdated. Our user analytics haven't been updated in over a year. In that time, our competitors have moved ahead, especially in mobile solutions. Where did you get this data? Someone from the IT department, from open sources, and from internal analytics couldn't stand it. It's not protected. Even an intern can see it. That, by the way, is the third point. Information. Security. Pause. Emma takes a sip of water. No one in the room is giggling anymore. And, lastly, culture. Now on the screen is a slide without text. Just a photo. An office, workstations, empty stairs. Separate photo booths, and next to them a diagram of communication flows. Who communicates with whom? Who listens to whom? Who is afraid? People are afraid to speak, afraid to make mistakes, afraid to be themselves. The smiles are polite, but not genuine. And yet, this is precisely the company's main drag. Not the market, not the competitors. We ourselves. Silence fell. I know what you're thinking now. How does she even know who she is? She stopped. I'm nobody. Technically just new. She simply sat in the corner, simply listening. Richard leaned forward. It was clear he was about to interrupt, but she spoke first. I have experience. I've worked with systems that refused to change until it was too late. I've seen how a culture built on fear kills talent. And I know that if you don't speak up, nothing will change. And at that moment, as if she had calculated it in advance, Emma clicked on the last slide. It listed specific proposals, a restructuring of the marketing strategy, a reboot of the product team with a priority on mobile UX, open forums, and anonymous surveys, a review of the KPI system, and the introduction of internal mentoring. The silence lasted for several seconds. It seemed even the air conditioner had become quieter. That's all I wanted to say, she concluded. She turned off the screen, packed her bag, and was almost out of the room when a voice behind her called. Wait, it was Richard. His voice was hard, his face tense. Who gave you access to the analytics? And who even said you could do this instead of your job? Emma turned around. Calmly. No one. But I am used to working to the point, not by instructions. If I break it, I am ready to bear responsibility. But then let you submit a report too. He hadn't responded for the last 6 months. She left. The people in the room sat in silence. Some felt ashamed, some confused, and some strangely relieved. The office had been filled with uncertainty during the day. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Emma returned to her desk. Back at the printer. No one was laughing anymore. Helena came over with coffee. Did you know that this would happen? I just told the truth, Emma replied. And it seemed she had come to the right place. That evening, Richard called her into his office. His office was spacious, glass enclosed, and overlooked the city. You've gone a long way for a newbie, he said, folding his arms. I didn't come here to be a newbie, she replied. He didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. The next morning, the office was strangely quiet. Everyone continued working as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. People began looking more often toward the very corner where Emma was sitting, and no longer with mockery, but rather with concern and interest. Richard pretended nothing had happened. His face still had the same self-confidence, but his movements were a little sharper, his voice a little louder. He wasn't used to losing control, a trait he had in front of his colleagues. He began to act. At first, it was passive. Emmy was no longer allowed to access shared folders. Her email suddenly stopped working. The IT programmers said it was a temporary glitch. Then the printer near her desk temporarily went out of order. Then, a wave of indirect pressure began. At meetings where she had previously sat silently with a tray of coffee, she was now pointedly excluded. Helena was reprimanded for allegedly providing unauthorized assistance. Someone in the smoking room said, "She just wants attention. Why even bother?" But Emma didn't argue or complain. She worked and continued to gather information. Every night in the office, late into the night, she had a plan, and time was on her side. A week later, an unexpected guest, Michael Warren, the vice chairman of the board of directors, arrived at the office. His appearance was unexpected. Such visits were usually kept under wraps. He walked the floors, talking to executives, asking questions. And on the 21st floor, not far from the conference room, he noticed a girl at the coffee machine. "MMA Parker," he asked. She nodded. "I have one question for you. Why don't you use your position?" She looked at him silently, then calmly replied, "Because I wanted to see the real truth. Not through reports and figures, but through people." He looked at her carefully. "Did you see it?" "Yes. And now I know where to begin." He nodded, smiling faintly. "Then we'll begin." The next day, an email arrived. No headings, urgent, or attention. "It's just that there's a general meeting tomorrow. Attendance is mandatory. Approval of the new management." This sparked a wave of rumors. Someone was saying they were appointing a new top manager, someone that they were going to sell the company. Someone else suggested Richard would be promoted. No one was even close. The boardroom was packed. People were standing against the walls, sitting on the windowsills, and there was a buzz of anticipation in the air. Warren came out, greeted everyone briefly, announced there would be changes, and called over the person who would now represent the board. "Please welcome the new CEO of the company, Emma Parker." The room froze. 2 seconds, 3. Then a whisper. Someone exhaled loudly. Someone laughed, uncertainly, nervously. Emma stepped forward. The same shirt, the same upright posture, the same calm eyes. "Good morning," she said. "I'm not standing here today to seek revenge or to prove my worth." She turned her gaze to Richard. He paled. His lips twitched, but he remained silent. "I'm here because I want us to start talking honestly to each other, because I see this company has potential, but it's buried under fear, under corporate window dressing, under a habit of hypocrisy." Silence, not a single sound. "I didn't come here immediately as a director. I started from the bottom, consciously, to see the culture for what it is. And I saw how they laugh behind your back, how they boycott those who aren't like you, how managers punish initiative, how fear exists." A pause. "But I also saw something else. People who can, who want to, who remain silent. Not because they don't care, but because they're afraid to be heard." She took a step forward. "From today, everything changes." Later that day, Richard's office was temporarily closed. He was suspended from his duties pending an internal review, but not fired. As he entered the elevator, his gaze met hers. Emma didn't turn away. He stepped closer. "Have you come for my head?" "No, I've come for justice," she replied calmly. "You have a chance, but only if you're willing to change." He stood silently, and at that moment something within him faltered. The mauve smile vanished. Only a man remained, frightened, broken, but maybe not completely. That evening, when most of the employees had already left, Helena approached Emma. "It's true. Are you really the CEO?" "Yes," she replied. "But it means nothing if we don't start listening to each other." Helena smiled. "I'm glad you're you." Emma nodded. "And I'm glad you stayed." Real. A day after the announcement, Emma disappeared from sight. She wasn't in the meeting rooms, the hallways, or the cafe. On the ground floor, the team was worried in various ways. Some thought she'd been dismissed. It was a PR stunt. Some hoped she'd changed her mind. But most simply didn't understand what to do now. since all the boundaries that had seemed impenetrable had been broken. Meanwhile, in an empty office on the top floor, Emma sat in front of a whiteboard, covered in marker. Before her was a plan for cultural transformation, not signs and slogans, not a mission and values, but real steps. From the introduction of anonymous forums to an analysis of the vertical power structure, printouts of anonymous employee reviews lay on the desk. She asked that they be collected before the presentation through the internal system, but not under her own name. She read them not as a director, but as a person. I'm afraid to speak up at meetings. Any word can be used against me. They take my ideas and pass them off as their own. Management pretends I don't exist. I told the truth once, and they demoted me. I just need to make it to my paycheck. Not to my growth, not to my purpose, but to my paycheck. She read these lines with a stony face, but something ached in her chest. Not pity, but anger, impersonal, structural. Because these voices aren't random. They're a system. 3 days later, she appeared in the office again unannounced, simply walked into the open workspace, and stood at the first desk she came across. We will have a new format of communication, she said. Every day I will hold short open sessions here, not in the office. Anyone can come, ask a question, express an opinion, anonymously or in person. Someone exchanged glances. First, in 15 minutes. If no one comes, then everything is fine. Then I made a mistake, and I'll leave. And she went behind the kitchen counter, where a stool and a whiteboard had been set up. 10 minutes passed, no one. 15. An IT guy from the third department approached. 5 minutes later, a designer with a disgruntled expression. Then, Helena. Then 2 more. And after 40 minutes, there were more people than at a planning meeting. Emma sat quietly, taking notes, not interrupting, arguing, or defending herself. She listened. Why do our bonuses go to those who are the loudest and not those who do the most? Why doesn't a single manager know the names of ordinary employees? Why are we afraid to send mail to management without approval? Emma wrote silently, then spoke, because the system allowed it. But from today, no more. A week later, the company launched an internal platform for ideas and complaints without names, without ratings. Only content. The best ideas were implemented, and complaints were responded to formally. One of the project managers, previously hostile, approached Emma in the elevator. I thought you were just a good actor. Are you serious? Thank you. I also once thought you could only change processes, but everything starts with people. Are you really from a farm? Emma smiled. Yes, my father kept an apiary. My mother taught at the local school, and I spent my entire childhood listening to adults arguing, not over money, but over words, over the truth. That's probably where it came from. Then it's clear why you're not afraid. But not everyone embraced the changes. Some top managers openly sabotaged. One day, Richard gathered several colleagues behind the scenes. She simply skillfully put on a show. Wait a couple of months, everything will return. People don't change. About Emma learned of this conversation and invited Richard into his office the next day. I'm not calling you to fire you, she said bluntly. I'm calling you to give you a chance, but only one. He looked at her without frowning, without condescension. And if I can't handle it, then we leave before you're asked. He nodded slowly. I'm not used to obeying. No one obeys anyone here. Everyone's in the same boat. And if you want to stay, row. 2 more weeks passed. Emma returned to the general meeting. The room was no longer filled with mistrust. The room was filled with anticipation. You know who I am now, she began. But that doesn't matter. I could have been anyone. The title isn't what matters. The meaning is. I'm not an accident. I'm a choice, and so is each of you. We all have a voice. Not because of the costume, but because of the essence. And if you want to be heard, let's start with ourselves. The applause was restrained, but genuine. And behind the scenes, someone whispered, she's not just a director, she's a mirror. A month passed. Something had changed in the company that couldn't be described in documents or diagrams alone. The air had changed. Not lighter, but cleaner. In the kitchen area, employees no longer remained silent when managers appeared. At meetings, those who had previously only nodded raised their voices. And most importantly, not out of fear, but out of respect, the managers began to listen. Emma didn't implement reforms from the top. Instead, she initiated working groups at the initiative of the employees themselves. In each, there was a person from management, a person from below, and a neutral facilitator. Their task was 1. To identify the real, not the convenient. Open meetings were introduced. Once a week, any department could invite the director for a discussion. Emma wasn't the only one who came. Everyone started coming, because it became clear that no one was too young anymore. On the first day of spring, Emma launched a pilot mentoring program, but not in the usual sense, where an older person teaches a younger one. Here, everything was the other way around. Reverse mentoring. Every new employee has the right to mentor a senior person, she explained at the 1-month meeting. Just so the seniors remembered what it was like to be invisible. Some laughed, but by the end of the month, they started talking. I think for the first time in years, I began to understand what fear sounded like in a voice. I regained respect for people who were just learning. Richard, too. The surprise of many, didn't leave. He stayed. At first, he was silent, then he began to participate in sessions, and once, he confessed at a meeting. I laughed at what I was afraid of. Emma showed me not a weakness, but a mirror, and I decided not to break it, but to look inside. He began to conduct internal training sessions not on management, but on vulnerability. Not everyone began to listen to him, but more than before. In mid-April, Emma received a letter without a name on ordinary office stationery. It contained only 3 sentences. Thank you for not giving up. I thought you were just noise, but you turned out to be a voice. She kept this letter in a drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Every nothing can become everything. One day she came back to the general meeting. There were more people than ever. Even those who usually ignored the meeting came. She stood up without folders, without slides, without a microphone, and simply spoke. Everything you see now is not my victory. It is the choice of each of you. When I arrived, they called me a country bumpkin. They gave me empty tasks. They were testing my mettle, not knowing that I already knew better about you than you did. Me. People were listening. Without phone screens, without averted eyes. I could have immediately said who I was, put on a suit, and said, I'm your director. But then you wouldn't have shown yourself. You would have shown only what was convenient for the authorities. But I needed the real thing. She took a breath. Now I want everyone to know. It doesn't matter how you look. What matters is what you know and how you behave with those who are weaker. And she added, true strength isn't in a suit, not in a loud voice, but in the ability to be yourself when everyone expects you to cave. The room was silent, but not empty. A silence, like after powerful words. When nothing needs to be said, Lena will tell someone in the cafeteria later. She didn't just become a leader. She made us want to be better ourselves. An IT guy from the 3rd department would answer. I used to think you had to be tough, but now I think you have to be real. A year later, the company would be recognized in the industry as one of the most humane, not because of PR, but because of the employees' own feedback. Richard would become the internal culture coordinator. And one day, during a new hiring wave, he would personally meet a newcomer in a worn-out jacket and say, Here, no one judges by appearances. If anything, ask Emma. She didn't change her because she hadn't forgotten where she started. And when one of the newcomers whispers, Who is this? They would simply answer, This is our director, the most honest person you'll ever meet.